Welcome to Chatting the Pictures. My name is Cara Finnegan, and I'm a writer, teacher, and historian of photography.
And I'm Michael Shaw. I'm a writer, a psychologist, and also publisher of Reading the Pictures.
This statue outside of New York's Federal Hall is sometimes used to illustrate stories about the economy, given that the New York Stock Exchange is right across the street. But the monument of George Washington, from this compelling angle, seems to resonate with several important national issues right now.
The photo was taken by Timothy Clary for AFP, and it was titled Hand of George, as we see the Washington statue outside the Federal Hall National Memorial on Wall Street across from the stock exchange. The photo caption ties the image to a brief decline in the stock market.
You know, there's this idea in economic theory of the invisible hand, these unseen forces that drive the economy. And after the recent GameStop investor frenzy, it seems as though those normally invisible financial speculations became highly visible. So to me, this image really performs that. The perspective is dizzying and disorienting. It's got this kind of towering scale. And even the choice to crop this image in an Instagram square, which echoes all of the other squares and rectangles you see in the buildings in this image, just to me highlights this idea of a contemporary moment where the unseen forces of the economy were really seen pretty clearly.
When you look at this photograph, it really draws a contrast between this alternative reality we've been living in for 4 years with Trump, and then a new clarity, a new sobriety with Biden assuming office. And so when you look at this photograph, it does immediately reference the stock market madness right now with day traders manipulating these cheap stocks. And then also, especially with that disorientation, looking from the ground up, and the outstretched hand of George Washington reaching toward Wall Street. You can't help but think about like the massive income inequality in this country, the gap between Wall Street and Main Street. The image cries out for that kind of interpretation and address, and so does the country right now.
That's a really important point. And this photo reminds us really symbolically of the spaces where the federal government and the financial world coexisted, and to some extent still do. This Washington statue, why is it on Wall Street? The statue was installed in 1883 to commemorate the first inauguration of George Washington on the site of Federal Hall, which served in New York City on this site as the first U.S. Capitol. The Bill of Rights was drafted there. George Washington gave his first inaugural address from the balcony at Federal Hall, and that is why the statue was placed there. So you really get this impression. It's almost as if Washington and that American flag hovering above that arm is sort of putting his hand down saying, okay, everybody calm down. The federal government is going to pay more attention to what's happening in the financial world now.
The reference to the site and the fact that this Federal Hall was the site of the first U.S. Congress and also the site of the inauguration of the country's first president. Well, let's think about context. It was only some number of weeks ago that the inauguration site and the U.S. Capitol was overrun by these rioters trying to destabilize the government. So the photograph serves as a reference for that also. So when you talk about trying to calm things down or steady things and address disorientation, the photograph fits that bill also.